Welcome to the fourth Manchester Mason podcast run by the MLC, Manchester Level Club. Today we have a fantastic guest, which is James Newman, the Deputy President of the MCF, Masonic Charitable Foundation, which was founded in 2016 following the merger of the previous four national Masonic charities. James, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you on, and we really appreciate you giving up your time and speaking with us and the brethren who are going to be watching this. So we're really grateful here at Manchester Masons for you agreeing to come on to the podcast.
Okay, my pleasure. As I say, I'm speaking to you from sunny Yorkshire.
Sunny Yorkshire, yeah, I know you're Yorkshire, but we'll get into a little bit of that in a minute. So James, tell us more about James Newman. What do you do for employment, hobby interests, family background? Tell us more about yourself, sir.
Well, I'm a chartered accountant by training, but spent most of my career in industry, working for public companies. And so the first half of my career was working in finance departments and running finance departments and in large companies. The second half of my career has been spent as a non-executive director or chairman of a numerous number of organisations, such as public companies, major charities, university, and public-private partnerships. So a fairly varied career over a significant period of time.
So you've been a busy man.
that's the business part, I suppose. In terms of hobbies, Freemasonry's been a major hobby for the last sort of 10, 15 years, as I've taken on a number of jobs within Freemasonry, national level mainly. But I am a watcher of sport now rather than a player of sport. Age does catch up with you eventually, as you will find out, I'm sure. But
already am a little bit.
I did play fairly high level football and tennis and in Yorkshire League cricket. So, but I had to give those up, partly through physical need and secondly through family need. So I watch now Yorkshire cricket, obviously, Sheffield Wednesday, when I can
good old Wednesday.
get to a point of trying to air my frustrations. I go to watch Sheffield Wednesday, and I effectively, because I am working quite hard on various things and lots of fingers in different pies, I take my holidays where I can, and so we do quite a bit of travelling. My wife runs a holiday cottage business in Yorkshire. I'm sure I'm not allowed to advertise.
Go for it if you want. I might come stay.
But we have two holiday cottages in just outside Pickering in North Yorkshire, and one behind our house near York. So that keeps her busy, but it also keeps me busy. I'm a very good polisher, and I use the tickling stick quite a bit. So that keeps me all fairly busy, really.
Yeah, I bet.
In terms of family, I have three sons, the eldest being 43, the youngest being 22. The elder two are both Freemasons, and perhaps we'll come to that later. The elder two boys have 5 boys between them.
Oh, wow.
So with my brother, who has twins, we do have a Newman football team, men's football team. We don't seem to do girls anymore in the family.
Yeah.
So, and my mother is 92, and she's in one of the RMBI homes in York, which is fairly close to where I am. So that's me.
Yeah. So are you still playing? Are you holding midfield for the Newman family football club?
Yes, I suppose I would be playing in midfield, which is where I used to play before, yes.
Yeah, so no, thank you very much for the insight into your family, and it's great. So hello to all the Newman family out there who may be watching. But to move on, to be honest, you've done so much, but one thing I want to mention now is you've received an OBE in
Yes.
2017, which is absolutely outstanding, may I say. What did you do to be awarded this honor, James?
Well, the citation read services to business, the economy and charity in Yorkshire. So the charity bit, obviously, I was more proud of than the rest. And that was probably around the Community Foundation in South Yorkshire, which I chair. And obviously I had been involved with the RMBI for a good number of years as well. So that was good, I suppose, for Freemasonry. In terms of the other elements, I've been deputy chairman of Sheffield Hallam University. I've been master cutler, which is like being a livery master in London. And I chaired the Local Enterprise Partnership, founding chairman of the Local Enterprise Partnership in the Sheffield City region. So all of those took me into some fairly high level government and local government activity, and working closely with both of those to steer the economy in the South Yorkshire region. And I'm involved and still involved nationally with the European, European funding programme that everybody is utilising at the moment. Obviously, we'll cease when we come out of Europe officially in a couple of years' time. So I've been quite busy, and obviously busy. I was delighted to receive the honour. And
yes, how was that feeling? How did you find out? How did you feel when you found out you were getting the OBE? Did you have any idea that you may have even been up for one? Because that's a huge achievement.
No, you don't tend to know whether you're up for it or not. It came through the post about 6 weeks before. Wow. Clearly, you have to keep it quiet. So that was probably more difficult than any Masonic secret that I've ever been able to keep. I told my family on Christmas Day, which is about 5 days before it was announced. So yes, it was very nice. We had a great day at the Palace the following year, in May that year, where I was able to take all 3 sons and my wife, obviously, to Buckingham Palace, and received it from Prince William, which was very nice.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. I'm trying very hard to keep quiet about mine at the minute as well. But that's another story. But to go into your very rich Masonic career, a good start is who introduced you to Freemasonry? Who got you involved?
Well, I'm a Lewis. My father and grandfather, his father, were both involved in Freemasonry, and my grandfather was the founding senior warden of the lodge. So I had a good background. On my mother's side, her grandfather, my great-grandfather, was a member of a lodge, was initiated actually into Zion Lodge in 1902 in Manchester, as it happens. So there was a connection there, but was involved in a number of other lodges in Yorkshire. So significant family. I went in early because of that, and as such, I spent a good number of years in Freemasonry.
Yeah, so that's great that so was it your grandfather, your father, or both who kind of brought you in, really?
Well, my grandfather sadly died. I didn't know my grandfather. He died just before I was born. So it was my father brought me in. He'd been through the chair in 1966. So he was a provincial officer at the time. So he brought me in along with an uncle who was my seconder. He was involved in some of the ceremony, but not all of it. He was not in the chair at the time, but he did do some of the ceremony, which was great. Yeah. So when I was very lucky.
Yeah. When did you come in then? How long have you been a Mason?
I've been a Mason since 1974, so I've done just over 46 years now, which is
wow.
Which is quite a lot. Yes.
Which is, yeah, definitely quite a lot. You're coming up to that big 50th. Hopefully, we can scam ourselves an invite to your 50th, James, when the big one happens.
Yes, you and a few hundred others, I suspect. That's if we're all allowed to meet together by then. But I would hope by 2024 we're going to be in that position. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully. So you mentioned before. So how many family members are Masons? How many of these? You've got your dad, your grandfather, your two sons, your uncle. You mentioned there. Is there anyone else who?
There were quite a lot of uncles in various guises. I think I was the 7th Newman to be a master of Hadassah, which was my mother lodge in Sheffield. My brother followed me about 7 or 8 years later into the chair. He was my inner guard. So lots of family around. Yes, my 2 older boys. One was initiated into Mount Sinai Lodge in Manchester, which is now joined together with El Mancunians. He was initiated there. I acted as his junior deacon. And my number 2 son was initiated into his school lodge in London, the Old Malvernians, and I did the charge. So played a part in both. Yes.
And how are your sons getting on with their Freemason career? Are they enjoying it?
Well, the elder one is sort of a bit lapsed. He went to work in Guernsey. He was a lawyer in Manchester, went to work in Guernsey, and had a couple of extra children, and is a bit lapsed. But I'm hoping I shall bring him back at some point. Number 2 has done very well. He went through his chair in 2013 and was a Metropolitan Grand Steward, which is like being a provincial Grand Steward, in 2016. He's done well. I think he's now Director of Ceremonies of the Lodge. So he's enjoying it. He's a member of another lodge in London, which I am also a member of as well. So eventually one day, I hope he'll be a Grand Steward as I was a few years ago. So.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, the Newman family seem to have great success within Freemasonry with working hard. So we can hopefully we get to meet them one day, to be honest with you, because that's
if you come to my 50th, then I'm sure they'll both be there.
Look, I'm begging for an invite there, James. Look at it. So you're a Yorkshireman, and you currently live near York as well.
Yes.
How did you come to joining an East Lancashire lodge? How did that come about?
Well, I moved over to work in Manchester in the early 80s from Sheffield, and I was obviously a pretty young Mason at that time. I joined a lodge called Fellowship, which sadly is no more, in Bridge Street. I found that I couldn't make the evenings and so on. So I resigned from there and I joined Mount Sinai in 1990, and eventually went through the chair. They had a vacancy about 5 years later. So I went through the chair, which was 3 years after I'd been through the chair in Sheffield in Hadassah. So slightly different ritual, or quite different ritual. So it was a learning curve for me to do the Mount Sinai ritual, which I have to say had been changed quite a bit from the normal emulation ritual. Mount Sinai was a new lodge, a relatively new lodge, 1979. And the founders of that lodge wanted to take out a lot of the ritual because it was just, they thought it was just superfluous to what was needed. So it was quite different ritual, but I had a great year in the chair. Initiated one individual, and who is still a member, I'm glad to say. I raised Ashley Heyman, who is is now Grand Officer, who was the provincial treasurer in East Lancs until a couple of years ago. So, and then about 4 or 5 years ago, we merged with the Old Mancunians, and that seems to have worked very well. I try and get over a bit. I probably try and get over to the meetings about once a year if I can. So
yeah,
that's how I'm an East Lancs Mason as well as a Yorkshire Mason.
I'd ask you which one you prefer, but I don't want to cause any trouble. So one of the things that I hear as well, because I'm only a fellow craft myself, I've been in not too long, and I get lots of advice. One of the advice is don't join too many things until you're ready. Now, when we spoke earlier, you didn't join any additional orders till you went through the chair, which I found interesting. But what additional orders are you in now? Because you sound like you're very busy as it is. So how many additional orders are you in, if any?
Well, I didn't join because I was building a career, and I was traveling a lot abroad during that career. So I waited till I was in the chair and I joined the Royal Arch when I was in the chair in '92. And then I joined Mark when I was in the Royal Arch chair 5 years later. And then I joined Mariners when I was in the Mark chair a few years after that. And in between, I joined Secret Monitor and Royal and Select Masters. And recently, I suppose in the last 10 years, I've joined Scarlet Cord, which is an offshoot of Secret Monitor. And I've joined a brand new degree, which in London, the Allied degrees, and I'm still working my way through the chair, up to the chair in that one. So I'm in all of those orders. I try and participate where I can, and I enjoy them all. Many of them, the other orders meet during the summer when the craft doesn't. So that fits in very, very well. And I play my part, and I've got grand rank in them all. And you don't get grand rank unless you do at least something, whoever you are.
I don't know how you're finding the time, but that's some serious amount of work that you're putting in there, to be honest, James. So you've received grand rank, and I know you've had provincial rank as well, but what other honours have you received then? What else have you got? Provincial? I
got provincial rank in Yorkshire, acting junior deacon, which was very nice. My grandfather had actually been acting junior deacon in the province as well in 1931, so I was able to wear his regalia, which was
fantastic,
which was great. It wasn't too worn out. And 3 years later, I was very fortunate. The provincial Grand Master in West Riding at the time, I'd been chauffeuring him around because to South Yorkshire especially, because he lived in North Yorkshire. So I was provincial chauffeur, and he appointed me to, well, he didn't, but he recommended me for an acting grand rank 3 years later. So I became assistant standard bearer, which was great, and had a chain and all the rest of it,
all the bling.
which was wonderful. Since then, I've had a couple of promotions in 2007 and in 2011, and then I finally became president of the RMBI, which was one of the 4 national charities, in 2013. And then in 2016, I retired unbeaten from that role and became deputy president of the newly formed MCF. And then this year, I've got another promotion to past junior Grand Warden. So
that is some good going.
So I've been very lucky. I've been in the right place at the right time in one or two instances. So
I'm sure you're being a bit modest there as well, James. I'm sure there's some hard work that's gone into that as well.
There's been some hard work, but you still need to be in the right place at the right time. And you need to demonstrate that you are committed and so on. So yes,
and rightly so, you have, sir. So yeah, you said you are a right worshipful brother. So what does this mean and how do you become a right worshipful brother? Because that's something you don't come across often.
No, you don't, and certainly in the north you don't come across it very often. That's for sure. How do you become a right worshipful brother? Well, I suppose those who decide it are well above my pay grade. So certainly every single provincial Grand Master is a right worshipful brother. And then probably those people who have worked in a senior role in Grand Lodge at national level, such as a president or of a charity, or as the Grand Secretary eventually, or the Grand Registrar or whatever. There is a senior Grand Warden and a junior Grand Warden every year anyway, as there is in province. So they're obviously wardens. So there are about, I would have thought, I've not counted them, but I would have thought there's probably 20, 30 right worshipfuls outside of those who are provincial Grand Masters. So it's a very honoured position to be in. But you have to work, as I say, for a good number of years in a central role to warrant it.
That's brilliant. So for, again, simple minds like myself, who I try to educate myself around Masonry, what's the start? So you start with brother, and then you could go to, what was after that?
Well, you start with brother, as you are. When you go into the chair, you become a worshipful brother.
Yeah.
You remain a worshipful brother whilst you get provincial grand rank. And then likewise, when you get grand rank, it's only when you get to a certain level in grand rank that you will then move to become a very worshipful brother. And then eventually, if you get to the equivalent of a warden, a grand warden, or a past grand warden, then you become a right worshipful brother. And then if your ambitions are particularly high and you've got plenty of time, they're on your hands, certainly, Dean, then there are two most worshipful brethren, and one of those is the Grand Master and the other is the Pro Grand Master.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, thanks for explaining that, because I wasn't too sure how that came across. I was very interested to know, but congratulations on getting that, because that is an absolutely massive achievement.
Thank you very much.
So how did you become Deputy President of MCF? Because that again is a huge role. And what do you do as the Deputy President?
Deputy President, right. What do I do as Deputy President? Okay. There were 4 national charities originally. The Royal Masonic Trust for Boys and Girls, which is the oldest charity, 1788, that was formed. The RMBI, which runs the care homes, that's 1840 something, so that's pretty old. The Grand Charity and the Masonic Charitable Foundation, Masonic Samaritan Foundation. Those 4 charities decided, after a lot of talking over many years, decided that it would be for the best if we merged together to become a single charity. And therefore, each charity had a president, which was a grand rank. So clearly, we couldn't have 4 presidents of the new organization. So it was decided that the new charity would, the new merged charity, MCF, would have a president and a deputy president. The other 2 presidents, 2 of the presidents were coming to the end of their term of office, so they effectively retired. Willie Shackle who had been president of the RMBI and also of the Samaritan, actually became became a trustee initially and then resigned, but then he became Grand Secretary for 18 months before the current Grand Secretary. The other president retired, and it was decided that Richard Hone, who was president of the Grand Charity, would become president of the new charity. And I, because I'm slightly younger and I was slightly newer to the job, would become deputy president. But more importantly, I would also, because of my business background, Richard Hone was a High Court judge at the time. Because of my business background, I would become chairman of the trustees. So that's how it worked out. It seemed to work out pretty well. Richard and I complement each other very well, and he's in the south, I'm in the north. He has very high Masonic connections in London, obviously, and I have the business background to be able to run the charity.
Oh, that's brilliant. To mention the RMBI, just for people who don't know about that, is there some? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think if I'm right, there's 17 care homes, and you employed about 1,500 people with RMBI. Yes,
the RMBI was formed in 1843. It built its first home in about 1850 something. Wow. And it was described as a home for the aged, decaying, and decrepit Freemason, or some words to that effect that certainly wouldn't be allowed to be used today. Yeah. And over time, it built up 17 care homes, 18 care homes.
18. Wow.
17 for elderly people, and one is for one smaller home is for adults with learning difficulties, which is based near Doncaster. So, which was a separate charity, but is now part of the RMBI. So the RMBI has these homes as far north as Morpeth, Cramlington near Newcastle, as far south as Exeter, as far west as North Wales and South Wales, and also as far east as Kent. So it's 17 homes across the country, 1,000 residents, and the average entry age is 90.
Oh, right.
So we have about 5% of our residents who are over 100, which is fantastic. So we do.
How many over 100 did you say? Sorry.
About 45 to 50.
Wow.
At any one time, yes.
Yeah.
So my mother, who is 92, keeps saying she's old, and I keep telling her that actually she's probably one of the youngest in the home where she is. So that is still run as a slightly separate part of MCF, because it's a business. As I say, it employs 1,500 people, mainly caring staff in the home. It has about 30 people at head office in London, and they work alongside the MCF staff. So, but it's got a terrific record. All of its homes are rated good or outstanding. So it's got 3 outstanding homes, and the rest are good, which puts us in the top 2 or 3% of care home providers in the country. So something that I think Freemasonry should be very, very proud of.
Yeah, and well done, because you were working for them for a long time, right?
I was involved with them. That was my first taste of Masonic Charity. I became chairman, became treasurer in 2003, and then chairman of the trustees in 2010, and then president in 2013. Yes, so I've got a great affinity with it. It is a great charity, and we are very much frontline for Freemasonry. Yes, so we're there in the communities that we operate. Most of the homes are supported brilliantly by the provinces. They have maybe 2 or 3 provinces supporting them. There is a Friends of the Home organisation in each province. So in Lancashire, there's a Friends of Ecclesholme. which, although it's in in West Lancashire, it's supported by West Lancashire, Cheshire, and East Lancashire. My mother's home in York is supported by the 2 Yorkshire provinces and Lincolnshire. So it's a great advert for Freemasonry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all your hard work when you were there, and the RBI team who are still working away today. Because I only learned about that when I spoke to you last week, and it was something I wasn't aware of, and it's really good to hear about it and to know.
Well, they're under big pressure at the moment, as you can imagine, with the COVID situation. They've done really well. A very limited number of cases in only about 4 or 5 homes. Most of the homes have managed to avoid any cases at all, which has been brilliant.
And is there any help that they need at all from Brethren, or is there anything?
Well, they've been getting help from different provinces, but they managed to source their own PPE, so they're okay for that. So yeah. So
as well as doing all that work, you went on to the MCF. So I know this is a big question that's next, but what is the MCF, and what are your aims and focus points for the Masonic charity?
Right. Okay. First and foremost, it's a charity, and it's a charity for Freemasons. So all our funding comes from Freemasons. We don't fundraise outside of Freemasonry. Therefore, every Freemason, whoever they are, has a stake in MCF. And that is done via, clearly we have trustees, which I'll come back to, but every province has 2 members representing them on a legal members of MCF, and the province elects those members at its provincial meeting each year. So those members are in East Lancs, I think, are, if I recall, your provincial almoner and provincial charity steward. So they would represent East Lancashire's. Doesn't have to be, but those 2 individuals. But in a number of provinces, they choose their almoner and charity steward. So first and foremost, that's what we are. We're there to support Freemasons and their families in times of need, and we're there to support other charities that we hope Freemasons themselves would actually support if they wanted to. And we're there, those charities are there to support disadvantaged in society. So that's our mission, I suppose, if you want to describe it as such. On a practical basis, what does that mean? That means that we support people financially. People have gone into poverty. And this is a message for your members, in that you don't have to be old to apply to Masonic charity. You just need to be in need. So when I go and talk to, and I've talked to 1 or 2 other young members groups, light blue groups, you may be made redundant. You may have a child who needs medical assistance that may have difficulty. You may have somebody in the family who needs other forms of support. You may need educational support. So you don't have to be old. So therefore, it's important that everybody at whatever age realizes that the charity is there for them. We're there for them 24/7, wherever you are in the country. We have partners that will deliver some of that activity for you, counselling lines, Age UK, at local level, perhaps some of the services that you might need locally. We support children in schools and so on. So on a practical basis, it's around supporting poverty or short-term financial difficulties, health issues where you can't get, where the National Health Service clearly is struggling to provide you with an operation, maybe within a certain period of time. Children's education, if something happens to the family, then we can support education and also special talent as well, if that needs some sort of support. And of course, the RMBI provides care. So it's a broad-based, which was one of the reasons for bringing the 4 charities together into one. It's a pretty broad-based. It's we call it cradle to grave support. So you know, we support bereavement services, hospices at one end, and we support young children. And in fact, we've got a national program going now with a charity called Home Start that supports preschool children, and more importantly, their parents, because if a child starts school and it's behind the curve in terms of learning, in terms of reading or writing or whatever, it starts school behind, then it very rarely catches up. So we're putting a lot of effort into preschool support for children, and that's for non-Freemasons as well as Freemasons. So our other angle is we support other charities and groups that are doing good in society, especially around the most disadvantaged. So we support every hospice in the country. We support Age UK. We give them a grant every year, and they've done a fantastic job recently in the recent project that they've been undertaking on our behalf, and not only going in and dealing with loneliness issues, but they've also unearthed somewhere in the region of £7 million of unclaimed benefits that older people are not claiming. So that's a big win. And it's, as I say, it's not just Freemasons or their families, it's the general public who are being supported as well. So all of this is done to underpin, all of the work that we're doing is to underpin and support Grand Lodge in their work, which is to increase membership, develop the philosophy of Freemasonry, the good that Freemasonry does, the improvement of the human being. It improves the public perception of Freemasonry, we hope, that is not as good as it should be. So all of what we do helps to underpin what Grand Lodge are doing as well, and we work very closely, obviously, with them on a daily basis. So that's what MCF is about. It's about you and your fellow Masons and their families needing support.
It's a huge amount of work.
It's a very complex charity, and they do a really good job. Yes.
One of the things, it was about medical advancement as well. Is this something MCF has been helping with medical advancement?
We, as part of the charity grants program, i.e., giving to other charities, we give £1 million a year to in research grants, either to particular projects. Over the last 4 years, we have sort of switched the emphasis from giving it to the Royal College of Surgeons or particular research institutes to supporting PhD students researching particular areas. We chose a theme of debilitating illnesses such as MS or Parkinson's or whatever. So we've been supporting research into that. So we've been supporting the research PhD students themselves doing the research, rather than just giving it to the institute where it just goes into a big pot. Yeah. Oh, that works very well. We have a separate research panel that's made up of some not completely but Freemasons, but there are Freemasons on it with some pretty high profile and significant roles, neurosurgeons and other senior medics who just happen to be Freemasons. And so they lend their time to advise us as to where we should be putting our research money.
It's absolutely fantastic, the amount of work that goes in and everything that's been happening in the communities. So anyone watching here, I know we may have an idea of some work of the MCF, but I would recommend everyone to go onto the MCF website and just catch up on all the work that's happening and everyone that's been supported, because the amount of work that is going on is just phenomenal. So just to be honest, just personally, I'd just like to thank you and everyone down at MCF just for all the work that you're putting in at the moment and supporting everyone, because I had this conversation with Martin Roach on our last podcast, who was our provincial secretary.
Yeah, so know Martin very well.
Yeah, he's a good man.
He lives in Yorkshire. He lives in Yorkshire.
Yeah, he's in a lodge in Yorkshire as well. He loves it. So I said one of the questions we came across was, if the Freemason support was taken out of the community, that it would really affect, and Martin said it would carry on, but there would be a great deal, a big gap left there if Freemasons weren't involved in the community and supporting. What's your view on that?
I think there's no doubt that both, whether it be provincial money that's raised at provincial level or money that's raised from MCF that we then put back into local communities, clearly there is a significant amount of money going into charity groups. We support Freemasons and their families probably to the tune of 15 million a year, and we support other charities probably around £5 to £6 million a year, although this current year it will be bigger than that because of the COVID, but we'll perhaps come on to that. So it's a big amount of money to take out of the system. I've no doubt it would carry on, but it wouldn't be necessarily as coordinated as it is now.
Yeah, and just to touch on, you mentioned about the sometimes the negative stigma that comes along with, unfortunately, with the Freemason. What are MCF doing now to make it more known, or if you are doing that, the work that you're doing in the community, is that being publicised a little bit more to reach the general public, or what's the plan with that?
Well, we've one of the advantages of having a single charity voice, of course, as opposed to four, is that we can focus on a single brand name and so on when it comes to communication. So we've got a really good head of communications, and he's got a really good team. We have our own press officer, as well, who's well experienced in this, and has in fact been advising some of the provincial communication officers over the last 2 or 3 years as well. So we are constantly putting out stuff. We piggyback on provinces where we've given money into provinces. We'll clearly piggyback on that. We're putting out stuff constantly all the time. I don't know the stats, but the stats are pretty staggering in terms of the amount of hits, either on websites or on Facebook, Twitter, and the amount of press cuts that we get are phenomenal. So from all around the country. So we've got the brand out there. 1 or 2 of us are involved in a number of national organisations, the Association of Charitable Foundations, Social Investors Group, and I'm involved with the Foundation Chairs Group. And there are a number of others as well who are doing their bit on behalf of MCF to raise our profile. And if we raise our profile, we're clearly raising the Masonic profile, because we've got Masonic in our name. So
fantastic.
So there's a huge amount being done. Just go, as I say, the website. I'll give you the website address later please. At the end. But if you just go on there, you'll see. And if you read Freemasonry Today, we have a quarterly magazine called Better Lives. That's distributed to, I think there's about 80,000 people on our list, but it's all done, most of it's done electronically as well. So a huge amount of effort gone into, and you'll see lots of little badges, MCF badges, around the place. That was from scratch. Nobody had one 4 years ago.
Didn't they?
No, because it didn't exist.
So
there's a huge amount of work gone into, and we've been well supported by the provinces and provincial grandmasters and the other rulers as well, who have supported us very well.
Oh, that's brilliant. So not just are you the deputy president of MCF, you're the chairman of board of trustees as well. What do you do as the chairman of trustees? Well,
it sounds as if MCF are doing a lot. Yes, we are.
You definitely are.
The deputy president's role is more one of representation. So I will go to provincial meetings as deputy president, launch festivals, finish festivals, talk at lodges, and so on. The chairman's job is a pretty conventional non-executive chairman of any organisation, whether it be a public company or a charity or whatever. So the chief executive and the executive team of the MCF report into me as chairman. So I've been very fortunate. I've currently got a brilliant chief executive who was my chief executive in the RMBI before he became chief exec at the MCF. He's about to retire, and we've just appointed a new chief executive who was his number two. So my success is very much dependent clearly on their success as executives. So my responsibility is to make sure that he and his team do their job properly, to manage the board, chair board meetings, manage the trustees and all of the things that they don't like or do like, deal with the Masonic, so where charity spills over and there are Masonic issues to deal with, because we can't please everybody all of the time. There are 48 provinces, as you will appreciate, and they all have a big stake in us, but they all think differently and do things differently. So my role is to with the chief exec is to help manage that process. I deal with all governance issues. We are as well run as any charity in the country from a governance perspective, and that's where my public company experience comes in. So we have all the various committees that you would expect us to have. So my role is to make sure that we've got committee chairmen who are appropriate, we've got the right committee members, we have a succession plan. If people want to resign earlier, we have a good mix of trustees with all the right skills that we need, whether they be professional skills or caring skills or whatever.
Who else is on the board of trustees with you?
Well, we inherited, there are 20 trustees and there are potentially up to 4 co-ops. So we started off with 24, 6 from each of the charities that were nominated by each of the charities. Over the last 4.5 years, we've changed out about 8 or 9 of the original trustees and reduced the numbers. So we're now down to 20. Okay. And we've replaced those original 24 with about 3 or 4 new ones. In fact, I've been having a conversation this morning with some colleagues because we've got a vacancy in one of our committees as a chairman. So we've just been working through how we deal with that. So that's part of my role. Those trustees are a mix of people. Some are grand officers, some are light blues, like you.
Oh, right.
So they're they're people with the appropriate skills or business experience or whatever it is. They commit to 4 trustees meetings a year. Most of them are on 1 or 2 committees. So that's another 4 meetings for each committee a year. And so there's a fair amount of commitment from my colleagues. There are, as I say, a mixture. We've got rulers on, provincial rulers, not PGMs as such, but we've got 1 Grand Superintendent, but we have a number of Deputy Provincial Grand Masters or Assistant Provincial Grand Masters on the committees, and we've got a number of other sort of senior or provincial Masons, ex-provincial almoners, and so on. So it's a good mix. It's a good geographical mix from across the country, and part of my role is to see that happens. And we're changing them out. There's about 90 employees of MCF.
90.
That's slightly down on the 4 charities combined. And they work in London in Freemasons Hall. We have the lower ground floor, complete lower ground floor, in some fantastic office space there. And there are around, and they all came, most of those came from the original charities. So we had to integrate them, promote some, demote others. We had 4 chief executives. So we couldn't end with 4. We had 4 finance directors. So there was a lot of integration work that went on in the first couple of years. So
that kept you busy.
That's my role. I chair the remuneration committee and the strategy committee. But otherwise, all the other committees work independently with separate chairmen. And I will attend those meetings from time to time just to keep me up to date and to look at who the good people are on the committees for the future and so on. So I do a normal non-executive chairman's role.
Yeah, I don't think you have enough on your plate there, James. I think.
Well, it's actually been easier. It's been easier doing everything through Zoom over the last few months. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier as well. So we're in if you want to word it, a strange time at the minute, or this with the COVID crisis going on. And what has been the MCF's response to the COVID crisis? Because I know you have done quite a lot, really, in supporting brethren and families. Again.
Yes, we came together with Grand Lodge, who obviously wanted to take some initiatives to try and make sure that Freemasonry played its part and was seen to play its part during the crisis. So we came together with them, and my trustees committed £3.5 million to the cause straight away. £1 million went to what are called regional groups, which are groups of provinces. So East Lancashire is part of the Northwest Regional Group, which includes West Lancashire, the Isle of Man, Cheshire, and North Wales. So that each one of those groups got £100,000 to spend on charities that were supporting COVID in their areas. We gave each province an additional £10,000 as well. So that's £500,000 because there are 48 provinces. We committed £1 million to 4 national charities. And we spent £750,000 already of that. 250,000 went to Age UK to support their local activities across their branches. 250,000 to Mind, which is a mental health charity for obvious reasons to help their work. And 250,000 went to Buckle, which is a children's charity that supports disadvantaged children who are having to obviously learn and probably to support their parents to learn and work at home as well with equipment and various other activity pact. And then finally, we agreed that we would have a call to arms to raise money through the COVID relief chest, to raise money for the second phase of all of this, which we think will start around September, October time. As we move out of lockdown, there will be other issues that people will need to worry about as furlough schemes stop and so on. So we've pledged to match whatever we raise in money from provinces and from individuals into this relief chest. Then we will match it up to £1 million. And I'm glad to say that we've just gone over the £750,000 mark this morning from additional donations from Freemasons into this relief chest. So that will mean that we will match that by £750,000. So there's £1.5 million there to be spent on future projects going forward.
And how can brethren donate into that fund for those who may not know about it?
Well, they just literally need to go to the MCF website, which is literally www.mcf.org.uk, and they'll see a big heading at the top, donate or coronavirus, and if they click on that, that will take them, I suspect, to the relief chest page. There are also other ways. I think it's on the East Lancs website. I'm sure it is. But there'll be plenty of other ways that they can do it as well.
Yeah, well, again, outstanding work, and it's something to be I'm proud of as well, being a Freemason, to see the amount of work that's going on. I know it's not necessarily me doing it myself and all your hard work down at MCF, but it's nice to see where the support is going and how
we have as at today we've awarded 8 grants in East Lancashire, totaling £46,000. So various organisations have got money back from the COVID fund, from that fund that we've set up through the local regional groups. So that's good news. Yes.
Oh, brilliant. And again, something else that MCF is doing, which to add to your list of achievements, and something that's helping brethren as family and friends. This is for Masons and non-Masons. I touched on the MCF wills when I done the podcast with Julie Ward, from ELMC. She's absolutely brilliant.
No, I know Julie.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Can you tell us more about what the MCF are offering and what the process is for the wills? Because I know when we spoke, I think you've already done about 300 or 400 wills.
Yes, it's a pretty simple process, and we're not alone in this. You will find that most national charities will have some sort of service. We decided that we obviously couldn't do it on our own. We needed a partner, so we've partnered with the Goodwill Partnership, and it is open to Masons and non-Masons as well to make their wills. We will pay for those wills to be made up to a certain amount. Obviously, there are some standard costs, but we're paying for it. And our thinking was it's a good way of raising money potentially in the future. We've always been very lucky in receiving legacies from wills going back decades, and probably to the tune of maybe £2 to £3 million a year on average. We get as a charity, so this was a way of perhaps just tying some of that future income in. So far, yes, we've done around. We've referred about 400 people to the Goodwill Partnership. I think about 275 wills have been completed, and we know, we don't. It's not a hard sell. We just say if you would like to mention MCF in your will, that would be very nice. So, but we don't know whether people do or not. Some people will tell us and some people will tell us how much. So at the moment, it's cost us £30,000 so far to support these wills and this will making, and we've got pledges of £600,000 for the future. So if you want to put it in purely financial terms, that's a good return. And we hope, and if nothing else, actually, it's a free service for all Freemasons to do, young and old, because you never know what the situation is. And our legacy manager comes out with the statistics, and I can't remember them, but there is a hugely significant number of people die without making a will. And at the end of the day, the state takes a big chunk of the money. So it's in everybody's interest to have a will, as I say, however old or young you are. And this provides you with a pretty simple and free way of doing it. So we say it's an additional service for you as Freemasons, but it's not just for Freemasons. Anybody else can do it as well.
So for anyone, for us younger brethren and older brethren who either haven't got a will or needs one updating, please take note of that service and support our charity MCF. Speaking of fundraising, it's coming up to the East Lancashire Festival. I know we're coming up soon. So how does that festival work, and what does that look like for us as a province?
Okay, well, if I just go back before MCF, each year, each of the charities would have a festival with a particular province. And that festival would happen, normally be a 5-year festival. So the province would raise money on behalf of that particular charity for 5 years. And then it would have 6 years when it wasn't raising money for any particular charity. It was up to the provincial Grand Master and his team to decide if money should be raised, where it would go. Much of it used to go into the local provincial charity like the LMC, but lodgers and individuals would have a choice as to what they would do. During a festival period, everybody still has the choice, but the provincial Grand Master, I am sure, always encourages Freemasons to say, during this period, we will put our money and give our money to the festival so that MCF can use it on our behalf. As I have just explained to you, that we spend 20 to 25 million pounds a year on grant making, so we need to get the money from somewhere to be able to do that on a consistent basis. And the festival system represents about 40 to 50% of our income. The rest comes from things like legacies and investment income and so on. So it's a very important part of what we do. Since MCF has come into being, then clearly what happens now is that 4 provinces are in festival at any one time for MCF. So from our point of view, we have at any one time at least 20 provinces, but probably nearer 25 provinces, over half the provinces in festival, either just coming up to or just finishing a festival. So that's quite a demand on our fundraising department that is the liaison. And the idea there is that clearly during that festival, everybody has fun, they enjoy raising money, they have lots of events, they cycle everywhere, they walk everywhere, they swim everywhere, they climb everywhere, they jump out of aeroplanes, they go to the Himalayas, whatever it is, people do things, and it brings Freemasons together. I hope I'm not talking out of turn, because I haven't been a provincial Grand Master, so I don't know, but I would think that if you talk to the majority of provincial Grand Masters, most of them would say having a festival during their term of office brings is a good focus. It brings the province together. It's a great reason for having social events and so on. And that's what Freemasonry is about. Yeah. So you're about to enter it. It should have been launched. I think the provincial Grand Master was planning on launching it at the end of this year, but I think that's now been put back till sometime next year, clearly when we know where we are and what and in terms of the virus and so on. But I hope that I will be there to help say a few words about MCF. Not as many as I've said today, but a few, like 5 minutes or whatever, as and when it's launched, about MCF, to try to convince people that it's a worthwhile cause.
Oh, that's brilliant, because I know we're just coming out of festival for my lodge in Derbyshire, and we're just about to come into festival in East Lancashire. So what's the commitment you're looking for each province? What is the aim for each province? Is there a certain amount you need to be raising, or?
Well, it's as much as clearly we don't set any targets. It's up to the provincial Grand Master. We tend to judge province against province, because obviously some provinces have got less than 1,000 members, and others have got 10,000 members or 8,000 members outside of London. So we judge it on the amount raised per member, effectively, per head. And I think to be fair, the amount is up to each provincial Grand Master. We publish what each festival has raised on a per capita basis. And I'm sure the provincial Grand Masters like a bit of competition, and we hope they do. We don't encourage it, but we don't discourage it either.
It's not a race, but don't come second.
So yes, we would hope. I think the last festival, which was for the RMBI, which I helped to finish, spoke at the festival banquet in 2015. I think that raised well over £500 per head over a 5-year period. So that's an average of £100 per person per year. But not everybody gives, of course. So it's more than that. So that's a good benchmark. Yes.
So, after speaking about all the commendable things you've done, one in your personal life and your Freemasonry career, I'd just like to ask you one question. What has been your most favourite and most memorable memory of Freemasonry? Because I'm sure there's a lot there, but what's your favourite one, if you can?
Well, I'm not going to give you it, and I'm going to give you.
Come on. I'm
going to give you a number, because I think after 46 years, I've got quite a few. So. My favourite or most memorable, when I went into the chair of my own lodge, and there were 180 people there.
Wow!
And just watching the parade of 105 provincial and grand officers, that was amazing. When my two sons were both initiated, the parts that I played, the most significant memory was when I became president of the RMBI. And seeing MCF finally come after a lot of negotiations, come together. The most frightening memory was when I was asked to propose the re-election of the Grand Master, and I had to get up and make a speech in Grand Lodge. So that was the most frightening one in 2000.
That's a good one to have. I like that.
2011. I've spoken a few times since then in Grand Lodge. And of course, the other frightening one is always your first piece of ritual, which for me was the 3rd degree tools, which was fine because it's the shortest. But I can still remember it today, and I haven't given it in 46 years, but I can still remember it today because I had to learn it literally from scratch. The most spectacular, memorable was being at Earl's Court in 1992, when it was the 275th anniversary of Freemasonry, and then being at Royal Albert Hall in 2017 for the 300th.
Big event.
Just seeing the scale and the dignity and the tradition of Freemasonry. I think as a young Mason in the chair at the time in 1992, being at Earl's Court where there were 7,000 Masons there, it was just wonderful, and I suppose spurred me on to say I'd like to continue and maybe have some ambition in this organisation. Yeah. And the most moving memory is going around an RMBI home on a constant basis and just seeing the pleasure that the residents have from being well looked after and living out their last years of their life in some form of dignity and with people around them and being well looked after. That makes me enormously proud, and it still does today when I go into Connaught Court, which is where my mum is, although not at the moment because I haven't seen her for 13 weeks, but when I go back in there. So a number of memories, but I'm sure you'll indulge me when you edit this.
No, it's no, thank you for sharing that, and it's really nice to hear, because 46 years is a long time, and as you can clearly demonstrate it, there's been a lot of hard work that you've put in as well, James. But is there anything you'd like to add before we go, just before we finish up?
No, I think I'd just like to reiterate, you know, my progress, personal progress, and I'd like to think some success in Freemasonry has been as a result of working within the Masonic charity. And I just want to emphasize that the MCF is Freemasons charity. It's there for you. You all have a stake in it. Please don't hesitate, any of you, young or old, involved or not involved. It doesn't matter. Once a Mason, more or less, always a Mason. So it's there for you, it's there for your family, and it's there for your dependents. So what I would say is, please use us, and then when you've used us, or maybe even before you've used us, please support us with your and that doesn't necessarily mean money, but it may mean in some other way, volunteering, being involved with our visiting volunteer movement within each province, being a volunteer through Age UK or some of the other national projects that we support. So that's my message. I've really enjoyed it. I should say I really enjoyed talking about myself, but sometimes I don't. But I've enjoyed it. Thank you. You've been a great quizmaster or whatever. Interviewer.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
I hope that I shall not get drummed out.
Nah.
if anybody's senior sees this.
No, definitely not. Just before we go, I'd just like to get our MLC chairman back in, Brother Fletcher, if you're there.
Hi guys, how you doing? Very good interview, sir. Very good.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add there before we wrap up, Daz?
No, I think everything's been covered beautifully. So yeah, okay. I'll leave it down to you, Dean.
Right. So
okay. You'll send me the link, presumably.
I will. Just before we do that, it is me personally. I'd just like to say thank you to you, James, for coming on onto the podcast. Really appreciate your time and all of your effort and sharing your. It's great to hear your stories about you personally and about the work that the MCF are doing. So thank you from Manchester Masons and East Lancashire Masons for you and all your team at MCF, all the 90 employees, all RMBI, everyone in Freemasonry who's looking after us and our family, friends and our community. So it was a massive thank you from me, and it's a goodbye from Manchester Masons for our 4th podcast.